everyone. So yesterday I was asked by a group member to comment on actually to provide my top tips to a new and small business on how can they manage their financials and bookkeeping in the best possible way. So here are my top tips. My first tip is always have a separate bank account for your business. Never mix your personal transactions with your business transactions. Whether you're running your business through a limited company or through your as a self-employed person, always have two separate bank accounts. One is your personal, one is your business. If it's a limited company, then the business account will be in limited company's name. If you are a sole trader, your business account will be in your own name. So you need to just stay disciplined on that. You need to make sure that one account is just for business transactions and one is just for your personal expenses. And if you are, in order to move money out of your business account to your personal account, if you're a sole trader, it is pretty simple. You just transfer that money out of your business bank account to your personal bank account, but stay a bit disciplined on that as well. Have a schedule, so do that transfer once a week or once a month or something like that. Just don't be like transferring little bit every now and then, because then you will lose track of what's happening. If it's a limited company, then it's a little bit tricky. You cannot just take money out of a limited company just like that. Even if you own that company, in order to take funds out of a limited company's bank account, you have to pay yourself salary and take funds out as dividends. My second tip is to always stay on top of your compliance deadlines. So stay on top of your tax return deadlines. If you are self-employed, you will need to do a self-assessment return. And fiscal year runs from 6th of April to 5th of April of following year. And your self-assessment return needs to be submitted. If it's in paper form, it needs to be submitted by 31st of October. And if it is electronic, and I mean most of the people do electronic now. I don't know anyone personally who does paper form now. So if it's electronic, the deadline is 31st of January the following year. So for tax year ended 5th of April 2023, the tax return deadline is 31st of January 2024. So always keep a note of that. Do not end up missing your tax return deadline. If you are VAT registered, then that's another thing you have to remember. If you're running a payroll, you have staff, then obviously make sure all of those returns, your payroll submissions are getting done on time. And then obviously at that level, you will have an accountant, and they will have track of all of that. You won't have to worry about anything. If you're a limited company, then you have to submit company accounts to Companies House. You have to submit company's tax return, and you have to submit your self-assessment return if you have taken dividends out of that company. And then there's a confirmation statement that needs to be submitted to Companies House as well. So you can see a limited company, the compliance requirements for a limited company are more complex than a sole trader business. And I would advise you have an accountant for both, really. But if you have a limited company, definitely, especially if you're running a payroll and you have VAT as well. Also, another tip is that, so just again to emphasize on that, do not forget your compliance deadlines. Keep a note of that. Have it in your diary. If you have a regular accountant, that accountant will have that in their diary, and they will remind you. I mean, I do always. I always have all of my clients, deadlines and dates in my schedule, and their accounts and everything is scheduled way ahead of the deadlines. If you do not have an accountant, I mean, some people I see, they do not have an accountant, and they just get an accountant closer to the deadline. I get clients like that sometimes. I mean, last month I had a client, they contacted me in June, and the deadline was 31st of July. So if if you are like that, you don't have an accountant like that, and you're thinking you will get one closer to the time, then you need to remember your deadlines yourself, because there is no accountant who's remembering your deadlines, right? So keep a note of that. Do not miss that compliance deadline, because it will end up in penalties. And I had a client who came to me like this month, I think earlier this month they came to me, and they decided to come to me because their company got closed last month, and that was because they failed to submit their confirmation statement. So these deadlines and making sure all of these compliance activities are getting done is very important. The next tip is to figure out which business structure is going to work better for you. Is limited company, owning a limited company and operating your business through that, going to work better for you, or is working as a self-employed person going to be better for you? Obviously, tax compliance wise, having a limited company is a little bit more complicated, but if you have an accountant, they deal with all of it anyways. But there are other pros and cons of both structures, and there are different tax implications as well, and that again depends on your circumstances, level of your income. So it's different for every person, so you need to work that out, or your accountant needs to work that out. Then next tip, and again this one is very important, is to have a cash flow forecast. As a new business owner, you might not have exact idea of the incoming, the funds you're going to receive or the money you're going to receive from your customers, but you will have a rough idea. But you will definitely know about your outgoings, how much you're going to spend, what are you going to spend that on. Have a cash flow forecast month by month for up to maybe 1 year or 2 years. If 2 years is too much, do it just for 6 months or 1 year, but definitely have one where you know exactly how much are you going to spend and what are you going to spend, and at what point are you going to spend that too. So you know exactly how much funds are you going to have in your bank, so you make sure you are never short of funds, and if you have excessive funds, you always know where to utilize them. In terms of your income, be a little bit restrictive. Always forecast the income you're 100% sure about. Forecast the one what you're not 100% sure about as well, but don't rely on that too much. So having cash flow forecast and then using that as a budget as well is very important for you to manage your financials properly. My next tip is to not to lose your receipts. Keep your receipts, keep your invoices. Most of the invoices nowadays are electronic anyway, so create a folder within your mailbox or your laptop and straight away move those invoices there. So when your accountant asks you for those at the end of the year, they are very easily accessible. Also use accounting software, especially if your bookkeeping is a little bit complicated. If you're recording mileage, you're traveling for your work, so you're recording your car's mileage, if you're VAT registered, if you're issuing invoices to your customers, definitely use an accounting software. And another benefit of having an accounting software is that it links to your bank, so it pulls in all the transactions and you won't end up missing anything. So reconcile your banks you'll be able to reconcile your banks through the accounting software. And if your books are not that complicated, don't get the accounting software. It's not required, it's a good thing to have. And you can just use Excel spreadsheet, or just either way, make sure you know exactly what's happening in your business, transactions wise, financials wise. If you don't have a bookkeeping software, your accountant will use their software anyways to submit your tax returns at the end of the year. So these are my top tips for now. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop those in the comments, or you can just start a new conversation.